How's it going, everyone? Bryce Newberger from the Soul Word here. And tonight, we're going to be taking a look at the letter of Hebrews, an ancient letter written to the Hebrews. Now, little disclaimer here. I want to give you guys a little bit of an inside scoop to me, my life, and what it is we're going to be talking about tonight. So, I'm going to get a little personal tonight, and I hope you guys will be okay with that. But this is our third look at the letter of Hebrews, and this section we're going to be in chapter 12. Now, a reminder: this letter originally wasn't written in chapter verse format. It was just a letter that a man named Paul wrote, and he wrote it to a church of the Hebrew people. And this letter was mass produced, and it was distributed amongst people, amongst the Hebrew community. And then sometime later, when they said, let's put together a collection of writings of the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of the way, as it was called, copies of this letter were submitted to be put into the New Testament Bible. And so that's where this comes from. But in chapter 12, as the chapters and verses were added later to make study easier, he's going to be focusing on suffering. He's going to be talking about suffering. Why do we suffer? This is something that one of our viewers of a previous week, Jen, she asked about why would the Judeo-Christian God, right? Why would this Jesus allow suffering if he's such a good father, if he's so loving? And this is a common question. So I think taking a look at this ancient letter, I keep motioning down here because I have my phone down here, which is also what I have my text on. But taking a look at this letter and seeing what it says will provide us great context for what's going on here tonight. So the personal bit, right? Suffering. Me personally, I have a lot of experience, unfortunately, with suffering and loss and grief. So much so that it was interesting. This afternoon, I was dealing with anxiety and panic attacks, and that's something that I deal with on a regular basis. Now, I've gotten professional help. It's been a lot of money and a long road and a long walk and process on depression and anxiety and all these other kind of mental issues that I deal with from day to day. And they're born out of trauma, and they're born out of deep, deep suffering. And this is a topic that's very near and dear to me. This is something that I go through on a daily basis. And so I think a lot of times when people go to a church or to a sermon or to a religious place and they want to hear something, and someone gets up and they start talking about suffering, a lot of times you think that's easy for you to say, right? You don't know my pain. You don't know what I've gone through. This year for Christmas, it's been really tough for me. Every day I've been dealing with more and more just depression and anxiety and mental issues. Last year, I was wrapping presents on Christmas Eve, waiting for my kids to wake up, and I was going to open presents and have a wonderful Christmas. We were doing the typical Christmas traditions, and I was such a kid, such a little boy when it came to Christmas. I love Christmas. I love the Christmas time. There's people who are like, Christmas trees are a pagan thing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, what? I don't care. I just like, ho, ho, ho and stuff. Right? I just like the traditions. I like the presents. I like the stockings. I like the candy. And I get all giddy around Christmas time. And I would try to find ways to make Christmas last as long as possible, right? I want to start celebrating Christmas on Thanksgiving, and I want to celebrate Christmas past New Year's Day, all right? I just want to celebrate Christmas all the time. And my ex-wife, she would be like, it's too early for Christmas music. You can't do it yet. And I'm just like, but I gotta listen to the Christmas music, right? I loved Christmas. This year, I've been trying to survive the holiday. But it was last year, I was wrapping presents. It was going to be a good Christmas. I'd been given a big raise by the organization I was working for. It had been a hard season of life. we had gone through a lot, not just the pandemic that we were going through, not just all the rioting and all the upheaval and just the fear and a turbulent election time and striving just to get basic supplies like toilet paper for my 3 kids, but we had a baby around that time and had a sweet little boy, and on his first birthday, he was diagnosed. He wasn't feeling well. It was really scary. We had to take him to the hospital. He was admitted to the intensive care unit for a few weeks in the middle of COVID. I wasn't allowed to go see him because of COVID. It was really just heart-wrenching for me to be separated from my wife and my baby, as we don't know what's going on. And turns out he's got type 1 diabetes. My wife was dealing with postpartum anxiety and depression, and so she was having a lot of mental issues, and we were struggling with finding acceptance within our community for the issue she was going through. She got a lot of heat for her mental issues, and a lot of kind of people who probably meant well but did harm to her, and I might be counted among those people. I don't know. But then, so Christmas Eve is coming. We get a big raise. It just seems like everything's turning around. And as I'm there, my brother-in-law, who is, to say in-law almost doesn't feel right. He was very much my brother. We raised our families together. He had 4 kids. I had 3 kids. There were 4 boys. I had 3 boys. They were all a year apart. So our kids were just, ages 2, 3, 4, it was just lined right up the chain. We lived in a cul-de-sac for a while there, and our wives would stay home and raise the kids and take them to the parks and the libraries together and have a great time. He got sick with COVID, and he was 36 years old, and we were sure he was going to recover. And unfortunately, on Christmas Eve, while wrapping presents, we get the call that he died. And as he passed, I just remember my wife at the time, now my ex-wife, and just the horrible pain that she went through and the intense suffering that I was struggling with, that she was struggling with, and trying to put ourselves back together and trying to cope, trying to deal, right? And so as I see, as people are celebrating Christmas this year, I'm not even a year removed from Christmas Eve on his passing, the anniversary of his passing, and I can't stop thinking about this black coffin and his 4 little boys and his wife, his dad and his mom, and, my wife and her other brother, and, my kids, and just all these really hard memories, right? And going through that grief, going through that pain, unfortunately, that wasn't the peak of my suffering. As I walked through that process, I continued to suffer. I continued to go through things. There was a lot of pressure on me and my position to keep up with work. I had to run a winter camp. I was a youth pastor at the time. I had to plan and run a winter camp. And so I had to take these kids, and get these cabins and buses. And it's a big deal. It's not easy to run a winter camp and run a curriculum and teach and preach and all this amidst still recovering from suffering, and my wife recovering from her brother and her mental issues and a child with diabetes. And so, it's a lack of sleep, it's a lot of shots. And so a lot of work pressure. Eventually, my wife, just through processing grief, processed it in her own way. And not to get into the weeds tonight, but it ended up that she left and we ended up getting a divorce, something I was very against, but I couldn't put it back together with her. And so now this Christmas season, I'm remembering the death of my dear friend and brother-in-law, and I'm, not with my children as much, and I'm divorced, and so the holiday's different, the season's different, everything is just painful and different, and so we go through pain, we go through suffering, and it's got us wondering, why? Is there a purpose? Is there a point? And so one thing we do here at the Soul Ward is we examine and investigate different worldviews, different religions, different philosophies, right? And so different religions, different philosophies would have different things to say about that. Today we're gonna dive into this letter where the context here is these Hebrew people were being persecuted. They heard this Jesus guy teach. Jesus came and he said, hey, that religion, that law that you've been doing, the checklist of religiosity, the offerings, the tithes, the sacrifices, you don't have to do them anymore. He said, the old system of law that was, do good or suffer and burn, he said, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to die, so you don't have to. And so he brought this new way. And people said, that sounds really cool, that sounds really fun, let's do that. But to walk in this freedom came with persecution. The religious leaders were saying, hey, you're breaking the law, you're breaking our religious tenets, you're following that Jesus guy who said he was the king of the Jews, he said he was God himself, and you can't be doing that. And so they were torturing them, they were killing them. Paul, who wrote this letter, used to be known as Saul of Tarsus, and he was a guy who was on the other team, and he would hunt them down, he would torture them, he would kill them, right? There was a man named Stephen, he came to town talking about Jesus, and Paul was there younger, and he held the coats of all the men who threw Stephen off a cliff and dropped large rocks on him until he stopped breathing, right? They killed Stephen. And so the people, as they're trying to embrace this new philosophy, as they're trying to embrace this new way of life and way of thinking that is very much doing away with the old traditions, the old laws, and Jesus saying, listen, my yoke is easy, my burden's light, you don't have to do it, I'll do it all for you. All you have to do is accept a free gift and you're in. That's it. And people didn't like that. They liked playing the game. They liked the power that they got from religion and the control that they got to exert and the political game that they got to play. And so people who opted out, people who opted to be followers of the way, they were tortured, they were persecuted. And this is where the Hebrew people, specifically this community of Hebrew people, they began to say, maybe it's not worth it, right? Maybe I should go back and play that game. Maybe I should go back to the old way. Maybe I should go back to temple worships and tithes and offerings and sacrifices and sacraments and feasts and all that. Maybe I should go back to this religiosity because this way was supposed to be easier, but now I'm persecuted, I'm suffering. And so Paul writes this letter to them, and so far he's been saying, listen, and he's been comparing and saying, don't go back to the old system, right? Don't go back to where it was. And he's been saying, you don't have to do that stuff anymore. And so he's been building up this case of Jesus is better than religion. And then the next portion of his letter, he talked about how the world has nothing for you. You want to go back to that world, you want to get riches and money and fame. And he's going to say, it's all pointless. It's all stupid. It's all irrelevant, right? And so I preached a sermon, or we had a talk, and it was Divorce the World. That was last week. And we talked about how we're looking at this and looking at this text here. It's a discussion about how we should no longer care about the things of this world, right? They're pointless, and the meaning is in eternity. That's what Paul was getting at. So here we're going to examine where he talks about existence is discipline, right? And that doesn't sound fun. Existence is discipline. Like when you think of discipline, what do you think of, right? You think of like being spanked, being scolded, being like chastised, getting your hands smacked, right? So we're going to go through chapter 12 and we're going to read a portion of the text. I highly recommend. Bibles are free out online. You can look up Hebrews on Google. You can get yourself a Bible almost anywhere. I recommend that you guys investigate this on your own, read on your own, and we can navigate that. If you want to join our Discord chat, I can help you find a good translation for you. That basically the New Testament was originally written in Greek, and they've translated it to English. But there's different translations, right? There's King James, there's New Living Translation, there's Christian Standard Bible, there's the Message, the Passion, all these translations. You can talk to me, and I'll help you get a translation that makes sense. I'll explain the differences between them, and we can talk about that. But read this on your own. I am not here to set myself up as a teacher. I am a student. And I am learning. And so I want you guys to be students with me. And so I'm not trying to teach the class. I want you guys to learn this on your own and participate in discussion and, give me some feedback and ask me questions. And let's learn together, as this is a study hall that we're having here, an online study hall. So we're going to start at verse 1. It says, therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us lay aside every hindrance and the sin that so easily ensnares us. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross, despising shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, so that you won't grow weary and give up. In struggling against sin, I have really bad allergies today. In struggling against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And you have forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons. My son, do not take the Lord's discipline lightly, or lose heart when you are reproved by him. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and punishes every son he receives. Endure suffering as discipline. God is dealing with you as sons. For what son is there that a father does not discipline? But if you are without discipline, which all receive, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. No discipline seems enjoyable at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. Therefore, strengthen your tired hands and weakened knees, and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may not be dislocated, but healed instead. Pursue peace with everyone and holiness. Without it, no one will see the Lord. We'll end there. There's a little part where it ends with talking about God as a consuming fire. That's going to be our fourth chat, where we're going to talk about this statement, falling to the hands of an angry God, right? What do we do with that statement? And so we're going to get into that next week. So let's kind of break down what it is we just read together. So there's this quote from a wonderful philosopher, which is the man in black from Princess Bride, Wesley. And he says, life is pain. Anyone who tells you different is selling something. So other places in Scripture, it says, let every trial and tribulation have its perfect work. There is this theme that existence is pain, and we see that. Childbirth itself is extremely painful if you don't have the right drugs, right? If you don't have the word escapes me. I've watched 3 of my children be born, and I forget the name, the shot you get in the back. Anesthesia. If you don't have anesthesia, childbirth is very painful. And even at getting the shot for anesthesia is extremely painful. It's just less painful than childbirth. If you get hungry, you have hunger pains. When you grow, you have growing pains, right? There's all this pain that comes with existence. And so we struggle as people to find various ways to explain how do we deal with pain and suffering. And so I'm very eager to get into other religions and other philosophies on other nights. Again, tonight we're going to look at what this ancient philosopher Paul has to say. He says in here, one second. Therefore, since we also have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us. So what he's explaining is in the previous chapter, he talked about all these people who died before us that were faithful, that believed in God, that believed in the promise of Jesus, right? Stephen is a good example, but he's talking about older people before Jesus. It's a long thing. And he's saying, since you've seen so many amazing people die for this belief, he says, let us lay aside every hindrance and the sin, the separation from God that so easily ensnares us and continually pulls us away from the things of God. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. So what he's saying is, he's saying that life is like a race, right? Forrest Gump. He's saying that life is a relay race that we're running. And he says, keep running that race. He says, when you're running that race, you're gonna, if you've ever been in a race, I don't know if you guys have ever, those of you out there have been in a race, but when you run, your legs burn, your breath rakes, your chest pumps, your blood boils, right? It's just, as you're doing these things, and it hurts. Sometimes when I'm running, my knees hurt. I run almost every morning, and when I run, in the morning, my knees hurt, and I get old, and my back hurts, right? But he says, don't grow weary. And the idea is, at the end of the race, you get a prize. He says, don't you know at the end of a race, only one person gets a prize? Run like you're the one person who's going to get that prize. So that's just some standard terminology. So to point out core in his philosophies, he's saying, we exist now. At the end of our existence, right, when we die, there is an eternity, an eternal paradise waiting for us. And so he's saying, live for the eternity, which makes sense. If you are going to, it's funny, but I just got this tattoo, right? I really like it. It's a fun tattoo. It's extremely painful. extremely painful. But I endured that pain to now have a piece of art that I had designed and had worked with someone on and put a lot of thought in, and this beautiful piece of art that I'm going to have for the rest of my life. And so it made sense to suffer for that short period of time, which seemed like forever. It's my first tattoo, and it hurt, especially the shading, and it just felt like he took a razor blade and was just carving off pieces of me. It was intensely painful. I eventually had to give up and early, so there's still a little piece of it that needs to be finished when I go back and see him again to finish up the shading work on the tattoo. So, but it was so painful, I just couldn't take it anymore, right? And so I had to give up on that. Now, it makes sense that I endured that pain for a short period of time to have a reward for the rest of my life, for the rest of my, look at it this way, if you don't believe in an afterlife, the rest of my existence right here on earth. So it was horrible pain. I had to get my mind right. I had to bite down. I had to, just do what I could to survive and get through it, because there was something greater waiting for me at the end, which was the finished piece of art. And it says, don't go weary and give up, because if I could never go back to him, right? If my tattoo artist got hit by a bus or whatever, right? There's other people who could do it, but this guy's like the best in the valley. If I could never go get a tattoo again, I would live the rest of my existence missing out on a piece of that art. I would be missing out on the rest of this wonderful tattoo. And for the rest of my life, I would have unfinished work. Beautiful tattoo, wonderful reward, still unfinished. And that's what he's explaining about eternity in heaven. He's saying, listen, you're going to get rewards in eternity. Now, this is different than Mormonism, where they would, and I think maybe Jehovah's Witnesses. I'd love to talk to one again. It's been many years since I've spoken with one, but they teach about layers of heaven. And so, like the Mormon faith would say that you have to do all this stuff to get into a higher level of heaven. And that's not what Paul's saying. He's not saying there's levels of heaven. He's saying everyone's going to get into heaven. Everyone's going to get into heaven. It's going to be great. No one's going to be jealous of someone else. There's no envy, right? But there are jewels and crowns and other things, other rewards. And so he says, keep running that race so you receive that reward. And what he's talking about here is not salvation. He's talking about eternal rewards in heaven. And so he says, don't let your tattoo be unfinished in heaven, right? Get your full tattoo. That's what he's saying. And so when he's talking about endurance and race. So he says, how do you get through that? He says, keep your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. He says, look at Jesus. Look at how much he loves you. Look at what he's given for you. Look at what he's done for you. Keep focused on him. So a little bit more tea for myself. This resonates very real for me. I have struggled with suicidal thoughts in the past. I've struggled with extreme depression, right? When the love of my life ripped my heart out and walked out on me, and I was so in love with her, and I wanted this marriage to work, and my 3 little boys who I loved dearly, and I wanted to spend every waking moment with them. When I can no longer do that, right, I struggle to find my purpose and my existence and my reason for being, right? And so I want to be here anymore. I struggled with depression. And so I got some help. I was enrolled into a facility to help me with that, which did a really terrible job of it. I'm just saying that's another talk for another day about how terrible our help facilities are. And religion did not help me. The religious church, I called the senior pastor, my boss, from the facility I was getting help at, and he fired me over the phone. So that was great. And so religion didn't save me, right? The facility didn't save me. The only thing that got me through that moment, the only thing that's persevered me through this very difficult time, the season that I've been in, I'm still walking through, has been keeping my eyes on Jesus. When I was in that facility, I was at my lowest low. I was fired. My wife had walked out on me. My mental health was hurting. I had pinched my sciatic nerve, so I was in a lot of intense physical pain, and the beds there weren't great for a pinched sciatic, right? It was terrible. And as I'm struggling with all of this suffering, it's the last day there, and I'm like, why am I here? I'm not a pastor anymore. I'm not a father anymore. I'm barely a father anymore. I'm not a husband anymore, right? All of my reasons for being, I didn't live my life for money. I didn't live my life for anything. I lived my life for my wife, for my kids, to help other people. And now, as excommunicated from the church, I could no longer talk. I wasn't allowed to talk to the people I had dedicated my life to helping anymore. All this terrible thing had happened. And I'm there on one of my last days, and this young girl walks up to me who was also getting some mental help. And she said, "Excuse me, are you a pastor?" And I said, "Well, I was fired." She said, "Will you pray with me?" And I said, "Absolutely." And I took her aside and explained that you don't need a pastor to pray with you. You don't need a priest or someone to show you the way of God, right? Those people can help you, like a study buddy, which is what I hope to be for a lot of people. But I explained, you don't need a priest, you don't need a pastor, you can do this on your own. So I taught her how to pray. I explained what prayer is and the importance of prayer. And I shared a little bit of hope with her. And I took a moment to step outside of my intense suffering and show her some peace and to show her some hope. And although I'm sure that probably helped her and she seemed really grateful, that really was a gift to me. It helped me keep my eyes on the pioneer of my faith. It helped me keep my eyes on Jesus and realize that I'm not here for me. As I'm running this race, I'm not running for me, I'm running for other people. And so what Paul's talking about is it's not for us, it's for others. And there's a deeper theological point we're going to get into here in a second. But while I'm here, right, I don't want to be here anymore, right? I'd rather be in heaven where I believe there's an afterlife and it's fantastic. Feasting and dining and playing and seeing. I have 2 babies in heaven already, so hanging out with this baby, seeing my brother-in-law again, seeing my uncle who passed away, right, my Uncle Pat, hanging out with my grandpa, who's gone too, right? I believe in afterlife. I believe they're there waiting for me. I'd love to be with them. But while I'm here, I've got 3 boys still to raise. I've got people to help. I've met more people as I've gotten out of that facility that I'm helping. And so my existence, what is my reason for life? I'm here for other people. And so how do I keep my eyes focused on other people when I'm such a selfish being who is so self-centered with my own self-survival, feeding myself, feeding my addictions, feeding, right, all of me? How can I possibly step outside myself and look at others? Now, I want to be clear. Other religions, other spiritualities, and other faiths have ways of doing this, right? I'm not saying that we own the market on this, but for Christianity, for the Christian doctrine, for the way as it was known originally, he was saying, look to Jesus, look at his example, look at he died for other people, think about other people, and try to get live for those other people, to give them hope and to point them to the way, the truth, and the life, right? So that's been the reasoning that I found in my life to keep pressing on. And so this is very much in line. So this is very personal to me tonight. Keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith, for the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross. What's the joy? That eternity, that paradise I'm talking about. And now that's our joy. It says, for the joy that laid before him. Now, what was his joy? Now, it's interesting. As we're in the Christmas season, right? What's that all about? Well, Christmas, for those of you who somehow don't know, it's not just the Coca-Cola holiday, which is mainly the Coca-Cola holiday now, right? As Santa is the Coca-Cola mascot for Christmas. But God, the Son of God, Jesus, was already in heaven. He already had paradise. He already had ultimate omnipotence, omniscience, omnipresence, and power, right? He had everything he wanted. He endured the cross. He came down. He stepped out of that to come here and save us. So his joy, his pleasure was us. And so it says, look at Jesus and how he endured the cross. Why did he endure suffering? He endured suffering to bring us to him, to make a way for us to come to him, to do away with religion, to do away. Right? There is this big, thick curtain that stood between the presence of God and man in the temple. It was a symbol of, and somewhat quite literal, the presence of God was behind this curtain, and you had to do all this stuff. You had to wash, and you had to go in there, and you still weren't worthy to be, with God, but you could step in his presence for a little bit during a certain amount of time. And this is part of the Jewish religion. And when Jesus died on the cross, as he died, it is that veil, that curtain tore and removed the barrier between man and God. And so that when it says, he endured the cross, despising shame, so keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer of perfect faith, for the joy that lay before him. What was the joy that lay before him? The joy was us. We are his joy. God so loved the world that he gave his only son, right? He himself gave himself a son, Jesus, that whosoever believes in Jesus will not be separated from God, but will have everlasting connection with God. So that's what he taught. So that was the joy. Jesus had to die to pave that way. It was all prophecy. It's the whole thing. Anyways, that's what this letter is talking about, is it's saying that's the joy that lay before Jesus. Not the joy of making more religion, not the joy of making more do's and don'ts, not the joy of wearing a suit and tie, not the joy, right? Not that. That's not his joy. His joy isn't making you dance like a monkey. His joy isn't making you obey and bow and all this. His joy was you were lost, and now you're found. You were separated, and now you're with him. That's the joy. And so, why am I still here on this earth when I'm suffering so intently? Is that because I'm not here for me? I'm encouraged to be here for other people. So I want to help other people find truth. Now, if Jesus is the truth, then they'll find Jesus. But I don't need to necessarily push people towards Jesus. I just want to push people towards truth. Let's all get better at discovering truth, right? And I believe core to this doctrine is that the truth will save you. So we need to find the truth, whoever or whatever that is. I believe it's a whoever. I believe it's Jesus. But I'm very interested at helping everyone just on their own personal truth journey. And I hope I exemplify that. And I hope people call me out if I don't, right? We're just study buddies. I'm not a teacher. We're just study buddies. So, for consider him who endured such hostility from sinners. He's talking about Jesus. As Jesus was going to the cross, he was whipped, he was spit on, he was stripped naked, he was beaten, he was nailed to a cross, right? So that you won't grow weary and give up. Again, it's just saying, look to his example. Don't give up, right? Don't give up on life. And what does giving up look like? Well, it could look like suicide in my case, as it was previously looking like in the past. But it could also be living a selfish life for yourself, saying, listen, I'll tell you guys, as someone who's dedicated his life to helping people, people suck. Like, I love you guys, but people can really hurt. People really hurt. And sometimes when you're just trying to be genuine, you're trying to be honest with people, you have no ulterior motive. People call you manipulative. People call you, right, they come after you. They rally mobs against you, which I've had happen to me multiple times. And people defame you, and that's very much what I'm walking through in my life, as I was excommunicated from a church and fired and known, like all this stuff, right? And now there's gossip that happens behind me about my back. And as I pursue to have an open conversation with people, there are staunch religious Christians who are like, Bryce has lost his way and he's, playing with witches, whatever. I don't care. I love everyone. And so I'll continue to love everyone just as Jesus loved everyone. But I receive persecution as well in that. And so, So when it says, consider him who endured such hostility against himself so that you won't grow weary and give up. Guys, as you try to help people, as you try to have, you get deeper and more involved with Christianity or with other people, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. And what I was going to say before, and that's what my little Freudian slip was there, is Christians will hurt you too, right? And that's the thing, like Christians we love people. Religion will burn you, right? They're very good at burning things, actually, I've noticed. But looking at you, Catholic Church. But the idea is that you'll get hurt. And as you are just trying to be genuine and truthful and honest with people, they're going to come at you. They're gonna have rocks in their hands, sometimes metaphorically, sometimes very literally, based on what part of the world you're in. And struggling against this, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood. Some of you have out there. And some people at this time had. The community he was writing to, he was saying that, remember, this is a specific letter written to a specific people with an overarching principle that I believe is universally applicable. But he says, you've not yet resisted to the point of spilling blood. And so that was these people, right? But a lot of us, we haven't resisted yet to the point of people attacking us. Now, I have been punched for trying to help people. It was great. But you have forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons. So here's where he shifts to saying, listen, you're God's children. He adopted you. So when you go in the way, right? I wish we were like the Mandalorian. I wish when I, followed the way, I wish I got a suit of armor. But anyways, he says, you're his sons, right? And so he begins to go on this thing about like, my son, do not take the Lord's discipline lightly. Now this word discipline is a Greek word that's pronounced paideia, and I think I did the pronunciation right there, right? I'm not Greek, but it's not just, it's discipline. We can think of spanking and chastising and correction, but the word paideia actually means to raise a child, right? I love my 3 little boys. I love them more than anything, and I love them more than life itself. And but part of raising them is sometimes I've got to be stern with them. Sometimes I've got to be hard on them. Sometimes I have to let my sons learn lessons about how the world works. Daddy can't always step in and punch the bully, right? I can't always do that for them. If I continue to do that, they're going to be spoiled and not going to learn how to do anything on their own, right? And so sometimes I have to watch my kids struggle and let them struggle. Now I want to step in, I want to help, but I'm also learning that there are limits to how much I can do with still raising them to be men. I don't have a daughter. I wish I had a daughter because I think that would kind of round out the human experience, but I don't have a daughter. So I can only speak to boys, really. That's my perspective. And so what he's talking about here is he's saying, listen, do not take the Lord's raising of you. Discipline is raising children, raising you lightly. Lose heart when you're reproved by him. Now that does actually mean like more of a, when he's got to be a little stern with you. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves. The Lord raises those he loves. And so I feel this a little personally too. Like I have some wonderful parents and I really love them, but they are flawed, broken humans and they have flawed, broken homes. And my mom's got quite a testimony. My dad's got quite a testimony. They've got some really amazing stories that I hope to get into one of these days. But part of having an amazing story of brokenness is that hurt people, right? And so in some ways, my parents couldn't be perfect for me. They couldn't be the most amazing parents. In some ways, they really hurt me as a child growing up. But I was really not raised by them, according to what Paul is saying. I was raised by God. God raises those who are his. He raises his children. And so the Lord disciplines, he raises those he loves, the one he loves, right? And punishes every son he receives. Now, there is a sense of punishment there, and that doesn't mean that God's necessarily going to strike you with a lightning bolt. It means that sometimes he's going to turn you away from bad things, right? And a lot of times we can bring that on ourselves quite naturally, but other times it can be divinely influenced, right? By what we call in the Christian terminology, shutting doors, which means door of opportunity was open, that door shuts, right? Why is that? God's trying to keep you away from harm. That's an active part of the Christian doctrine that they teach. So it says, endure suffering as discipline. Endure suffering as you endure suffering in life. Treat it as God is raising you. God is dealing with you as sons. For what son is there that a father does not raise? But if you are without discipline, which all receive, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. And what he's really just saying is that, like, hey, he's not saying that if you're out disciplined, like if you're not a disciplined person, if you don't meditate, if you don't read your Bible, if you don't give to the church, if you don't do this, you're illegitimate sons. You're gone from the church. No. He's saying, listen, you're all sons of God, and therefore you can take the suffering as just further proof that you're a son of God, that you're a daughter of God, that you belong to the king and the kingdom. That's all he's saying. He's not saying, because he went before, he said, let us lay aside the elementary teachings of sacraments and sacrifices, right? He says the old covenant, as we talked about previously, he says the old covenant is gone. Jesus established a new covenant and the old will be done away with. That's why Christians don't keep kosher laws. That's why they eat pork, right? That's why we can wear shirts of mixed fabric, right? That's why women can, have their periods in public or, and not be kicked outside of town. There's a whole lot of stuff there, right? Why? Because those religious laws are gone. They're gone. Now, following some of them can be good, like don't lie, don't steal, don't kill. Those are most people and most religions would agree those are some pretty good things to do. But even if you do those things, God isn't going to kick you out of his kingdom. He's not going to disown you as a child. The Bible makes it clear Jesus will never leave you, never forsake you, that no one takes you out of the Father's hand. So he's never going to give up on you. He's never going to give up on you. And that's so important to me, again, personally, as we talk about kind of my walk through this, is that when everyone gave up on me, he didn't, right? My wife gave up on me. Church gave up on me, right? Everyone gave up on me. And I'm at my lowest low. In my lowest low, there is that girl who says, will you pray with me? I believe wholeheartedly that she was pointed to me by a higher being, a being who loves me, who considers me his child, and said, hey, listen, Bryce, I haven't given up on you. I don't disown you. I'm not done with you. Your existence has meaning, and you are here for a purpose. My son, do not give up. Do not grow weary. Keep going strong. So, as we endure suffering, he says, no discipline seems enjoyable at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. What's righteousness? Right by God. That's all that means, is being right in the eyes of God, being right with him. All things are right. So he's saying, as God is raising you, as he's showing you this life, and as we live in a flawed and broken world with flawed and broken people, and the more you try to do what's right, the more you're going to get hurt. The more you try to go in the right way, the more you're going to receive opposition, right? That's not even core Christian doctrine. That you see that in all religions. You see that in motivational secular speeches, right? It's out there. If you're hitting enemies, if you're hitting opposition, you must mean you're going the right way. That's what we said. So he's saying, what do you get at the end? You get to be right with God. You get to go to heaven. You get to make others right with God. They get to go to heaven with you. You take them with you. It's going to be awesome. Now, therefore, he says, strengthen your tired hands. Therefore, strengthen your tired hands and weakened knees, and make straight paths for your feet. Make some straight paths for your feet to walk on. Don't go the narrow. Don't go the wicked way. Don't go the twisted way. Don't go the rocky way. Right? Stay on the straight path. That's what he's saying. Now, sometimes to save people, you're gonna have to step off the path, and that's what other scriptures about, like the Good Samaritan, right? He goes off the path to save someone else. But what he's saying is, keep your life free from things that will hinder you, right? So if I'm trying to help people, if I want to help people, which is what I want to do, that's what I've learned, right? I can get money. That's great. What do I spend money on? I'll tell you what, when my wife left, when I lost my job, all of the I'm now a minimalist. I wasn't before, but I became a minimalist because I looked at the big TVs and the big games and all the toys and all the stuff and all the knickknacks, and I realized it was all a joke. It's all a joke. It meant nothing. What mattered to me was my wife, who I was losing. What mattered to me was my boys, who I wasn't able to see so much anymore. What mattered to me was the people I was helping, who I was excommunicated and cut off from. Those are the things that mattered to me. So that's why I became a minimalist, but you don't have to do that. Enjoy your stuff, enjoy your presents, right? Christmas is great. But he's saying, if I want to help people, if I want to do this, but I go around lying, I go around stealing, I go around treating people terribly, it's going to hurt my message. People aren't going to want to listen to me, and that's going to make my straight path harder to walk. And so it says, so what is lame may not be dislocated. If I'm already having a hard time with being a good person, if I'm already having a hard time being disciplined and being honorable and being right, and I don't need to do those things for God to love me. He already loves me. I'm already saved. I'm already going to heaven. I don't need to do anything to earn that, right? His yoke is easy and his burden's light, right? I don't need to do anything. I don't need to do anything to earn that. I can't earn it. It's already mine. But if I'm already having a hard time doing that stuff so I can be a good messenger to people, so I can help people see and I can be respected and have people, want to care about me and help me in my own personal life. If I'm a terrible person, if I'm a jerk, if I'm stealing, doing all this stuff, I get thrown in prison, right? All this stuff, it's going to hurt me. So what is lame will become dislocated. What is already difficult for me to do, it's already difficult for me to be a good person. That already doesn't come naturally. Then that will become dislocated, right? And not good becomes evil. I become a villain. I don't want to be a villain. Though I am sure I am a villain to a few people with a few things in my life. But so it says, but won't become dislocated, but healed instead. What does it mean be healed instead? It means if you go this way, if you continue to do what's right, if you are disciplined, you're going to have a better time in life. And we see this in life, right? This is the philosopher Paul here, right? Take Christian doctrine away from it. We see this in life. The more you keep to a diet, the easier it is to follow that diet, right? The more you exercise, the easier it is to exercise. Right? When I start a run, and I haven't run in a long time, I start running, it's like, I call it the calibration phase. I'm like, I'm all like, I don't feel good. Like everything's like out of place. As I begin to run more, as I get a mile in, I start to have a better posture. My arms pump a little bit better. When I work out every day, it's easier to wake up every day and work out. If I take a month off, which I did that for November, I took a month off from working out. I got back into working out for Christmas time, for December, because I ate too much turkey or whatever. And it was like, very difficult to get back into the gym. It was very difficult to wake up early and go work out again. So we see this. We see that if what is lame, doesn't become dislocated, it becomes dislocated if I'm lazy. It becomes healed, becomes restored if I'm disciplined. And so that's what he's talking about. Just like, hey, if you're struggling with being faithful to your wife, then stop looking at porn. Because that's not going to help you be faithful to your wife, right? If you're having a little tryst at work or something like that, and you're looking at porn on the side, you're not going to be faithful to your wife. So stop doing that. Because what's lame is going to be dislocated, right? So if you want to be faithful to your wife, you want to only have eyes for her, then only have eyes for her, and that will be healed, right? And so if you're having a hard time, keeping your commitments, then don't tell little white lies. Oh, it's just a white lie. It's easy, right? It's saying don't go around telling lies, because that's going to make it difficult to keep your word. And you can have a big falling out. And we've seen it in our lives. Be honest, guys. We've seen it. We've told a little lie, it got away from us, and then we ruined our name. We lost a friendship, right? We've been terrible. I have. I'll raise my hand for that one. So this has nothing to do with salvation. Keep that in mind. Paul is not saying do this so God will love you. God always loves you. He's giving us tips on how to go an easier way of life. And so pursue peace with everyone and holiness. Without it, no one will see the Lord. And so what he's saying is pursue peace with everyone. What he's saying is don't argue with people. Don't fight people. Don't be a curmudgeon. Don't be a jerk, right? And so, and pursue holiness. He's saying pursue God's holiness, God's otherworldliness, right? The things of God, the things outside the world, the separate part. And so he says, without it, no one will see the Lord. What he's saying is that if we're all terrible witnesses, no one's gonna find the truth that we think we have, right? If you think you have the truth and you want to be a messenger of that truth, he's just saying, be a good messenger of that truth. If everyone is a bad messenger of that truth, then people are going to struggle to see that truth. That's all he's saying. And so, deep Christian doctrine here, right? A deep Christian doctrine. Last little point is he's saying here, if you look in Genesis chapter 1, right? This is primarily for the Christians here, right? Genesis chapter 1. But if you want to understand Christian doctrine, I hope you're listening along. He says, let us create man in our image, man and woman, mankind, humans in our image, so that they may rule, right? So they're going to rule. If you go to Revelation, end of the Bible, it's a prophetical book of the end times, all that. It's going to explain that we have a crown. We rule in heaven. We judge angels, this whole thing. So a lot of this, what is God preparing us for? He's preparing us to rule. We're going to be nobility. Let me tell you some of the worst management I've ever received. Outside hires. Outside hires, right? Those are some of the worst managers. Let me tell you the best managers I've been under. Managers who worked their way up into their position. Those are the people that I want to serve. Those are the people I want to be with. Those are the people that I want to work for. Managers come in outside hire. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. I found this in the corporate IT world. We're talking about technology here. It's not like get your stats better. It's like, he's like, why did you fix this computer wrong? And I'm like, bro, you have no idea how to fix this computer. Let me teach you how to fix this computer, and then you tell me if I fixed it wrong. You know what I mean? It was terrible. And so, I was the kind of manager who when I did manage, I worked my way up into management, and I trained all of my employees. And when there was a code red, right? When everything went crazy, I delegated a few things to people and I did the most crucial work myself because I was the best hands for it. That's the kind of person that I want to rule over me, to manage me, right? And that's what God is saying that he's doing with us. This life sucks now. You're getting a tattoo right now, but grit through the pain because he's got a beautiful piece of art for you. He's got something amazing for you, and he's got a job for you. And this is the qualification, right? So if you opt out, if you live lazily, if you're not a good employee, if you're not, if you're going to live the life for you, if you're going to be a jerk to everyone, you can still go to heaven. You can still do it. God still loves you. He doesn't hate you. You don't have to give your money to the church. You don't have to live a pure life, right? You can do whatever you want, and God will still love you. But if you want to be fit for management, right? If you want to rule, and that's what he's getting into, is he's got a job for you. He wants you to rule. He has his things for you, right? If you want those eternal reward that he's talking about, then run that race without growing weary. Don't give up. So guys, I've been really candid with you guys today. I've been very open with everyone about my own walk of life, everything that I'm going through. I hope you've appreciated that. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on the side. I am an open book. Through all that too, I don't want to sound like I was a saint. I was not a saint. I have a lot of flaws, and I can showcase them brilliantly. But I have endured a lot of suffering, and this text really helps me. And it got me through a really dark time. It's been getting me through a really dark time. And so I'm sharing this with everyone, not to say go be a Christian, not to say go follow Jesus if you're not a Christian out there. I'm sharing it because this really helped me. And I really believe in this. And so I hope it can help someone else. I hope it can open someone's mind up to what really helps. As we go here in the Soul Word, we'll examine and have plenty of platforms where other people can do this. They can sit on this platform and they can explain to me what really helps them. And I'd love to investigate that truth with them. But if you're joining us on these Sunday talks for specifically Christian doctrine, I really appreciate that. And if you're Christians out there, I hope you're being challenged. I hope you're able to apply these things to your life, and I hope that your theology is growing. I hope your understanding of Christianity is growing. With that being said, that ends our talk on this section of Hebrews. We have one more. We're going to talk about the wrath of God. And so if you want to know more about, so I've talked about this loving God, this wonderful Jesus, this amazing person. How do I circle that square? How do we look at a wrathful God then and a loving God? Are they two different gods? Did God change? We're going to talk about that the next time we talk about Hebrews. Now, for the Christmas break, I'm going to take some time to enjoy the holiday. Now, truth be told, I don't really enjoy the holiday, but I'm trying to find new traditions and new ways to do it. I'm just trying to get through this holiday, give my kids some sort of a Christmas. I don't know. I'm recently divorced. I'm still trying to figure this out. But I'm going to take this next week off from streaming and try to figure that out. So we'll pick up next time. But that is our conclusion for the talk on Hebrews.